Welcome to the Jboy Show, hosted by Jake Crain, the fastest growing sports show in the nation.
I'm Coach Hugh Freeze.
This is Super Bowl champion Brandon Graham.
Hey, this is DJ Shockley, and you're watching.
And thanks for watching the Jboy Show.
Hello, everybody, and thanks again for joining us on another edition of the Jboy Show. I'm going to take a little dip into the NBA today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between coaching in college basketball and professional basketball, playing as well, and got a great perspective here from a guy who's doing it right now, coaching with the Pelicans. Excited to get him on. But first, before we do, as usual, got to give a shout out to our partners at betonline.ag. Head over there today. The online casino is always open. We've got horse racing. You've got NASCAR. You've got golf. You've got professional basketball, baseball, all that stuff. They've got all the spreads, whether you like parlays, pleasers, teasers, props, however you get down, they've got everything at betonline.ag. Head over there today and tell them that Jboy sent you. But very excited to bring in Pelicans assistant coach, former WCC coach of the year at University of San Francisco, played at Northwestern Kansas, 7 seasons of the NBA, and that's Coach Rex Walters. Coach Walters, I really appreciate you joining us, man, especially in season. I know how that stuff goes down.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to talking some basketball.
Definitely. And, you know, I want to get into the season and how it's going right now, because, you know, we're in the ebbs and flows and we all know there's momentum, lost momentum again. But I want to talk a little bit, you know, your experience being able to go from college to the NBA, not only as a coach, but as a player. And I know our audience, you know, a lot of places and different shows talk about generic stuff, but I kind of want to get into the minutia of the difference from a guy that's done it. And listen, we all know there's a lot better players at the NBA level. Everybody's really good, but I want to start from the coaching aspect of it. When you're coaching in college and really from a preparation standpoint, is it like people say the difference between college football and the NFL? It's a lot of a different approach. There isn't as much yelling, I guess, as you could say. But can you talk about just the amount of preparation? Because that's all you guys are doing is game planning, really, in that league.
Yeah, so I'll watch close to 7 games. I'll watch every single possession. I'll have every single play call. I'll have every way that a guy scores offensively. So I'll understand, like, you know, an example, you know, John Morant's a right-hander that loves to drive it left, right? we have to make sure, and what shots he likes to shoot when he drives it. What tendencies does he have when he drives it left? He's going to create contact. He's going to shoot the right-hand floater. He's going to bring it back in front of you. So what are you going to do in angle pick and roll? What are you going to do in side pick and roll? What are you going to do in high pick and roll? All of those things, and you're going to try to push him to your help. So you don't have players as much like that in college basketball. And so you've got basically 8 to 10 guys that you're going to know everything about those guys that you can over that 7-game stretch. And then looking at the analytics, you know, looking at all the different numbers to try to put together a game plan with really in this COVID year, really no real time to prepare. It's just a walkthrough. So your edits, your teaching points need to be really, really clear. I think the great thing about this level is the guys are and we're a young team. Like Stan did an unbelievable job, but we're a really young team that knows how to play. I think they're learning how to compete and win at a high level. We haven't gotten there yet, but I think next year and over time, the great thing about Stan is he really teaches that. Yeah. And helps guys get to understand because he's the only guy really besides, David Griffin that's really competed in the finals for a championship. And he's done it from a coaching side. So a lot more goes into it. As a college coach, there'll be some tendencies. I think usually the margin of error is, believe it or not, a lot bigger because there's even though there's probably less possessions, the talent level and the gap sometimes. When we coached against Gonzaga, they had NBA players. Well, we didn't, right? We did in San Francisco, but we were able to compete with them, especially at home. Whereas in the NBA, everyone is really, really good. The court is actually smaller, right? The rim is actually higher. Yes, it's 10 feet, but it's higher because there's shot blocking, there's length, there's athleticism, there's quickness. So it's such a bigger challenge, and the coaching is really, really good as well. And nothing against college coaching, but they don't have the time that we have really to really dissect the team and really convey it to your team in order to compete at the highest level and try to give yourself the best chance of winning. And you look at the margin of error, like games are, a 7-point win is like a blowout in the NBA. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's a lot different in that aspect.
No, coach, and that's a great segue. I love the explanation of the rim might as well be higher because you're having to obviously elevate the ball higher when you've got 7-footers running around that can do amazing things. I mean, I watch Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I just, I don't know how you get a shot over that. Now they do it, and it's unbelievable. But just guys like that are able to elevate the 7-footers, all the big men in that league that can not only do that but can step out and hit the three. But coach, it's a great segue because you talk about the time and. In college, you have to worry about academics, obviously, and recruiting. And there's a lot of other stuff, and it's a lot more hands-on outside of just going over the film and game planning and stuff like that. Is there, because in the NFL, with all that time, you can put in a lot more stuff. You have more empty checks. You have more this. You're able to go to more things. You have more adjustments overall. In the NBA, are there a lot more defenses that get put in per teams, or is that kind of something that's overblown? You're going to have your identity. You're going to have your defensive sets, and I'm not asking for them. I know, Coach, I'm not asking for the secret sauce here, but is there a lot more, just a big helping more in the scouting report when it comes down to being able to change defenses and manipulate the game like that as it goes?
Well, usually as a college coach, we primarily had two different ways that we guarded pick and roll. And it didn't matter whether it was side, angle, middle, it didn't matter because guys couldn't retain right at that point because of academics, because of their social life, because of all the different things that they're going through. Whereas in the NBA, it really is, they're really focused in. So you can cover a lot. You can play in, big drops. You can play up to the touch. You can play in some blitzes or clamps. You can play on a squeeze and under, and guys will get it a lot better, right? So that's why the personnel aspect is so important defensively. If a guy's not a great come off the screen shooter, you can mix in some more like getting under the screen and then catch them on the other side. But then you've got Damian Lillard or Steph Curry. Your pickup point is basically at the circle.
Yeah,
you can pull up from there. Your bigs have to be up higher. So. There's a lot more things to cover. I couldn't talk to you about college football. I would think that those college, especially big time programs, they have more help in terms of academics.
More resources.
So they can, but still at the same time, their players aren't going to be able to retain as much. If we show a 2 to 3 minute edit on players and we make certain points, 1 or 2 points, our guys can really retain those things really well, and they have to. And so that's why, it is a lot more detailed at the NBA level, but also the players can retain more in order to be successful.
No, and that's exactly right. And I almost liken it, and I use the football references because we obviously cover football a lot, and there's a marrying there, and I want them to, kind of be able to understand that. I kind of view what you said about the pick and roll in college and having really two answers to that because that's all the time dictates almost how you defend the zone read or RPOs in football in college. Typically in college, you got two ways. We're either charging the mesh or we're going to squat with the DN. We don't have 14 different adjustments we can make with different guys and stuff like that. So I think that's a great parallel. I think it was a fantastic explanation. The pick and roll is such a good example because it's such a big part of the game of basketball now. And as a guy, that played in it, and I think it's got to be such a unique and really a cool perspective going from playing at the high level you did in college to playing at the high level you did in the NBA to coaching at a high level in college and obviously coaching at a high level in the NBA and watching the way the game has progressed offensively. It's got to be pretty, cool. And again, love defense and all that stuff, but watching the guys now in the NBA, you talk about the Damian Lillards, the Steph Currys, where they're in range when they step in the gym or they're 5 yards away from the door, the Luka Doncic's and guys like that. How many times do you catch yourself and not gazing, but being like, man, these guys, not they weren't talented, Rex, when you played, you were a baller, brother. You played against ballers. I know that, but it's just amazing watching these guys do this and the way that it's now pick and pop. Everybody can shoot the three. We're in transition and stuff like that. Just how different is the game now than when you played, Coach?
It's completely different, to be totally honest. The 3-point play, of course, the skill level of players nowadays, as the like Michael Jordan, he could play in any era. Like Charles Barkley could play it in, like certain players could play it in any era, but the way they've been able to stretch the floor with the 3-point shooting, the number of players that are like, we talk about positionless basketball. You didn't have that back then. When I played in Miami, you give the ball to Timmy Hardaway, you run your butt off, you get down the floor, and then you wait for something to happen. And the other thing is where it's different. Everyone knows this, like the post play is not the same. Like when you look at Jokic now, like he can score from 3, he can score from the mid-range, he can play at the elbows, and yes, he can also play on the blocks. Whereas back then, your centers were basically on the block players. They didn't stretch the floor. Your fours, a stretch four was really it was obsolete. I mean, to be honest, the guy I worked for really started all that when you had that Orlando team with Dwight Howard, but they had the stretch fours that really spaced for. Well, now we got stretch fives. So it's a whole another area. Like we're one of the few teams that's truly a ground and pound team with, Steven Adams, Willie Hernan Gomez, and Jackson Hayes. Well, none of those guys shoot threes, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to develop that with Billy, with Jackson a little bit. Because we don't have that in our arsenal. We really have two back-to-the-back players, and Zion's not a back-to-the-back player, but he scores at the rim. So that's where it's so different nowadays, is now every single guy on the floor, a lot of the times, at least 80% of your personnel out there can shoot the three, can shoot it at a high level, can handle it, pass it, shoot it, and that makes the game really, really difficult to defend.
Yeah, to me, I feel like it spreads the floor out, and you've got to, obviously, it's like having to guard every blade of grass out there. And you're right. I mean, nowadays you see, especially in transition, you got more trailers than a trailer park there in the upper corner of Lower Alabama now in the league, regardless of who's what. You bring up Joker and guys like that, and it's amazing to watch. And just having to put together a defensive game plan to have to defend that. That's why you look at overs, and they're 223 now and 227, and games are being won 42 to 131 in regulation. And they're just so talented. And we're here with Coach Rex Walters. And real quick, I do want to give a shout out to a new app that is taking over. It's Dynasty U. It's like a LinkedIn for high school players, coaches that are looking for prospects. If you want to put your child, or if you're an athlete that wants to get in the best position possible to get your game seen, to possibly earn a scholarship, to get your profile seen, academics, everything that a coach looks for in one spot, which gives you a better chance, you need to download the Dynasty U app. It's on iOS, the Google Play Store. It's free. It's absolutely free. And again, nowadays, we know how much technology has affected recruiting, and coaches don't want you blowing them up about your kid. I promise you, I was one for 9 years. A coach would tell you, and it must be nice in the NBA. You ain't got to worry about that. But even in college, that they don't want that. You can send them an email. That's great. But if you send them 30, they're not going to look at it. But if you download the Dynasty U app, I promise you, they're going to look at it because it's organized, it's quick, and they can make a decision. And again, the tape's going to get him offers or her offers. The grade's going to get him or her offers, but you got to be able to get eyes in front of it. And that's what Dynasty U does. So download that now on the iOS or Google Play Store. We're here with the assistant coach for the New Orleans Pelicans, Rex Walters. Some great insight, really behind the scenes about the game. And coach, I want to talk about the Pelicans. Obviously, you guys are a young team. You brought it up. There's a lot of excitement about the future. And also, and we talk about this all the time in every sport, at that level, when you're putting together an organization that you're trying to win long-term, patience, as hard as it is for the fans, is key, because like you said, it's teaching, and you guys have had success and stuff like that. But can you kind of talk about where you guys are right now with your youth in their development? Because some nights, and I know you know this as well as anybody, I mean, we're looking at some guys really step up and have a big night. Another night, it's a learning experience.
It really, and we had some big ups and some big downs. I mean, we beat the Clippers at home. We beat Denver on the road. We beat Boston on the road. We had some great wins. I think the biggest thing for our young team needs to understand is you got to have that effort every single night to give yourself a chance, especially on the defensive end of the floor, because there's going to be nights where you're not shooting the ball well. Maybe the turnovers are high, which you're not going to win if the turnovers are ever high. But there's got to be a level and attention to detail to give yourself a chance, especially when you're playing, teams that are down right now. Cleveland's been down, all of a sudden Atlanta's back up. We couldn't handle them. The teams, Minnesota, we lose at their place early in the season. We lose at our place, early in the season. We got them in overtime, late in the season. Like, those are games that you have to win. And then you got to give yourself a chance against the Denvers, against the Lakers, against the, even Golden State, which we got once at home. Like that, we need to have that type of consistency, especially on the defensive end. It always comes down to this. Are you going to be great in transition defense? So you eliminate layups, you eliminate open threes. Are you going to take care of the basketball at a high level, just like football? You turn the ball over, you're not going to win. It's just not going to happen. And then the last part of that is, really understanding, like, we're going to defend and we're going to rebound. In the half court, we're going to defend and rebound. If we do those, great in transition, take care of the basketball so we get a quality shot every possession. And the last thing is defend and rebound. You're going to give yourself a chance every single night. Well, we made some great, we started out defensively really well, then we really took a back seat and we didn't defend it well. Well, when we started to defend it well, our offense struggled and we had some injuries. So you really got to lay down a foundation defensively that, hey, we're not going to beat ourselves. We're not going to turn the ball over. We're going to really defend. And now we have a chance every single night to win. And a young team doesn't always understand it. You got guys that are trying to prove that they can play in this league, which is great. You got to be able to prove that you can play in this league. But now we got to take that next step. I think David Griffin said it. Now we got to prove that we can compete and win at this level and really put ourselves back in that playoff picture.
No, and Coach, it's when I was hearing you describe defense, to me that kind of sounds like that's the identity that you want these young guys to have out there on the court. And when you guys are humming and you guys are where you need to be, what is the because all it's as well as anybody, it's about matchups, it's about personnel, obviously at this level. But what is your guys' identity? What do you see in the future when the Pelicans are rolling, when the Pelicans are going head to head with the Lakers all the time? Because it's going to happen eventually. It's going to happen with the talent you guys and the path you guys are on because you're doing it the right way. But what did you think with this team? And I know there may be some additions, there may be some attrition, there always is. But what is the overarching identity that the New Orleans Pelicans, you, Stan, Coach Griffin, you guys that are trying to put into these guys, what is the overarching identity you want this team to have?
Well, I think what Griff and Stan are really trying to hammer home is the fact that we are going to have a team that can defend at a high level. So you need length, you need athleticism. I think that's always, if you look at the top teams and the teams that usually win at a high level, they're usually around the top 10 in the NBA in defensive rating. So I think that when you have some more length on the floor, which we were a little bit of a small team, our starting power forward was 6'6" for crying out loud. He happens to be Zion Williamson. Pretty darn good. Right? But then we have some length with Brandon Ingram. We had a smaller two guard in Eric Bledsoe. We had a bigger point guard in Zoe, but we want a little bit more length, especially coming off the bench as well. I think then you want to talk about your shooting, and we weren't a great shooting team this year. So I think that's something that I think Griff and Stan are really going to work hard at, to add some of that with whatever additions, subtractions that happen to our roster, because you're going to have attrition. I think if you do those two things, right, and then we lost a lot of close games, a lot of games that we should have won, quite honestly, that we have to have a competitive IQ about how to close those type of games. And again, with a young team, sometimes you learn more from a loss. It's still professional athletic, sports, and you want to win, but young guys need to learn. And sometimes the pain of a loss, right, stings a little bit more, and you learn from those things. I mean, it's always a process. And this is only Griff's second year here. This is Stan's first year here. So they're coming together. I think they really have a great working relationship, where they understand, hey, these are the three things we got to address with our roster. And then we got to coach them at a high level to get them to compete and truly compete at the level I think that we want to compete them at. We want to compete and win at.
Yeah, and just a couple more questions for you. We're here with Coach Rex Walters, assistant coach for the Pelicans. Hell of a player, played for Northwestern, Kansas. Damn good at coach at San Francisco, too. There's a reason why he's coaching in the NBA. And, Coach, it's just a structural question that I want to ask you about Zion. Obviously, I can't leave you here without asking about Zion, or they'd probably shoot me in the middle of the city. But when you look at the structure of a coaching staff in the NBA, is it, do you have your defensive coordinator? This may be an elementary question, but I want our audience to really kind of understand it. Do you have your defensive coordinator? Do you have somewhat of an offensive coordinator with assistants under him? Or is it kind of a medley of guys putting together a scout that takes into account not only offense and defense, but what I refer to as special teams, the inbounds plays and things of that nature?
Well, I think, number one, Stan covers a lot of ground, but he has someone in Bob Byer who was a really good defensive mindset that's been in the league for a long time. They've worked together for a long time. And then he kind of leaned on, Casey Hill and Fred Vinson, myself a little bit. And then we had a player development staff that really honed in on player development of our younger players and making sure our older players are getting what they needed. So it's a blend. I mean, Stan does an awful lot. Like if I talked about his scouting, I mean, he'll scout every single game, and we have 5 other coaches that work on scouts as well. So you have, really a lot of guys looking at your pregame plans. Bob Byer will scout every single game as well. We have our player development staff making sure our guys are getting what they need from a skill standpoint. So you got a lot of moving parts, and they're all trying to come together. And this was, again, our first year together as a staff.
Yeah.
So getting to understand each other, to understand. I worked for Stan for a year in Detroit, so I had a little bit of an idea. Bob has worked with him for a long time. All the other assistant coaches had never worked for him. So I think there's also teamwork within the staff where you got to get to know each other as well. Yeah. And so I think we got a really good staff. They're all really good people. We're learning an awful lot. We learned a lot about this league and what we need to do to be successful. But Stan really sets the bar very high, and we've got to do it really well, or you're going to feel a foot right up your butt. We're not getting it done. So I'm excited about where we're going with this thing.
Yeah. And, it's funny. Everybody always talks about team chemistry and chemistry on the floor. Well, there's a coaching chemistry too. There's a camaraderie there that if that's rolling smooth, it's amazing how that can affect the chemistry of the players on the court. Because obviously they're looking and saying, hey, these guys get it. They get along. They're not afraid to challenge each other, but it's in a respectful way to get us where we need to be to have the best scout available and adjustments. And I think that needs to be talked about more. And it's a great point. But Coach, Zion Williamson, sitting here, I try and think about who he compares to, kind of a gameplay style wise. I guess you could say Charles Barkley because of the size a little bit, maybe something like that. But who does he remind you of, if anybody? Because again, he's obviously super high profile, a lot of hype, and he's shown he has the ability to do some really amazing things in this league.
Well, he is truly unique because he has a mixture of a lot of different guys. You brought up Charles Barkley because of his size and athleticism, his explosiveness, his willingness or his ability to play over and through, rim protection. But also you talk about a guy like Giannis because he is kind of a point forward for us. Yeah. He really, we play some really high level basketball when Point Zion came into effect. So he brings something that no one really has seen, because he is a mix of a Charles Barkley and even a Luka Doncic. Because he is a point guard in a lot of ways, and his assist numbers are only going to come up because he didn't play it the whole year. Last year he was a back to the basket player, and Stan had the foresight to see that, hey, this guy can be a point for us. I want to really see what he can do. But when you do that, you're going to have some good days and bad days as well. Not only from an offensive standpoint, from a defensive standpoint. So I think we've got a much better feel for where Zion is and where he can be. So our starting point going into next year, I think, is at a much higher level. Obviously, that brings a lot more excitement to what we have going forward. But he's an unbelievable kid, highly, highly coachable, wants to be great, listens, works at it. And so it's really cool for me to get to say I'm coaching truly one of the top 10 players in the world. Yeah. And that's what he can be. So I'm really looking forward to next year. Hopefully, COVID's done and we can have a true training camp and really get after it, have a true preseason and really build around him and Brandon Ingram. He's a big, big part. Those two together at the age of under 23, we've got two bookend players that really we can build around, put the right pieces around to really compete for championships, get in the playoffs and do what we're capable of doing.
Yeah, well, I know the future's really bright. We're talking about matchups. Zion at point, that's a heck of a matchup for whoever's got to guard him. And the point Zion offense, really excited to see that and him keep developing, and you guys keep developing the talent around him. You talk about Brandon Ingram, you can go down the list. And Coach, I really appreciate you taking some time, man. I know you're super busy. We had Corey Brewer on about a month ago, man, working our way up the staff in the Pelicans, man. And just really appreciate you coming on. I know you guys are excited about the future and enjoy watching you, and really appreciate you joining us, Coach.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun talking.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you guys joining us as well. Make sure you follow the Pelicans as they ascend to greatness. Keep your eye on them there with all that young talent. Make sure you hit the jboyshow.com, grab some merchandise, hoodies, koozies, masks, whatever. Even though the masks are starting to go away, order whatever. We're adding stuff every day as well. Also subscribe on YouTube, the Jboy Show, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen or look. It's been another edition of the Jboy Show with the Pelicans assistant coach, Rex Walters. And like Zion going to the glass, we're going, gone.
The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, Technical Director Dave Hammock, Creative Director David Culbertson, Audio Engineer Feyzan Shareef, Production Assistants Blaine Crain and Kyle Orr, Executive Producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, Steve Chamberlain, and David Cohn. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, thejboyshow.com, for updates regarding our newest apparel and merch designs. Win the water cooler with the Jboy Show.